Well, hello, and welcome to episode 266 of Drink the Movies. I'm Brian here, as always, with Michaela. And last night, we made it out to the movie theater. We were the last ones, maybe in the whole world, to have seen it. But we got to take in an artist that really defined a lot of people's lifetimes, ours included, in the brand new biopic, Michael.
Yes. Now, full disclosure, everybody, I have a story to tell. I come up with the calendar every year, and I had put this on the calendar for this week.
Hmm.
And Brian took one look at this calendar and got real mad. He even called me and said, I have a bone to pick with you. And I was like,
True so far.
what?
Although I did not
And
call you. It was in person,
no,
but I did. I did have a bone to pick
sorry,
with
you
you.
didn't call me. You didn't call me. We were sitting at the bar at the movie theater, and you were like, I do have a bone to pick with you. And I am very scared of ever upsetting Brian. So I was like, what did I do? What happened? And you were like, we're not watching Michael again. We did that last year. I've seen enough John Travolta to last a
We did.
lifetime.
Yeah.
I I'm not
Take a
doing
burn.
it again. I will not do it. And I was like, the Michael we're covering is the Michael Jackson biopic, not
Mm.
the
Hmm.
Angel. And he
Not
was
not
like,
the
oh,
angel. Yeah,
well, fine then. So here we are.
that's right. I
Um,
said I will do Face Off, but no other John Travolta. But yeah, today we were talking about Michael, not the angel. John Travolta. Michael, if you want to hear us talk about that one, you can go back. We did like a cookie cocktail for that. That was pretty good. That was pretty good. But today we're doing a good cocktail too, to celebrate the King of Pop in this new biopic here. We're going to talk about all of that stuff. We're going to talk about music biopics. We're going to talk about this period of Michael Jackson's life that gets examined in the film. But before we do that, we need to mix up something that gets featured in the film, though not to the extent that I wish that it would have been. So let's do this, Michaela. Let's grab some bourbon. Let's grab some pomegranates, and we'll be right back to mix up this week's drink.
so Brian, I looked and scoured the internet on all the things that we could do. And there are a lot of Michael Jackson inspired cocktails. There really are. But I decided that I was going to try and be original because if Michael Jackson was one thing, he was original. He had some really interesting ideas of what he wanted to do with music, what he wanted to do with experiences around music, right? There was this group of short films he did that were kind of music videos, but also like truly like short films that told a whole story.
Mhm.
And um, the movie delves into that a little bit. One of which is probably the most popular one, which was Thriller. So I decided to try and make a thriller cocktail, um, and I did that. And I made it, so I'm a little biased. I would love to know what your thoughts were because we weren't able to make this together this time.
Yeah,
Um,
okay. Yeah. Well,
yeah,
bias. Let's
yeah.
go. Yeah, the thriller. Yeah, absolutely. I think the thriller section gets the most and the least amount of examination in the film, but more on that to come. Let's talk about the cocktail right now. Let's go ahead and make it first. Into a shaker thing goes 2 ounces of bourbon. Any bourbon of your choice, like Maker's Mark, something like that's going to be good here for a cocktail like this. So 2 ounces of that, 1 ounce of pomegranate juice. You can squeeze some pomegranate, some arils. Is that what those things are called that come inside of
Mm,
a pomegranate? You can get
hmm
a bottle of pomegranate juice. Pom is the big popular one. I think I had one from like Knoll's Farm, something like that. They're 1 ounce of that pomegranate juice, a half an ounce of ginger syrup, and a half an ounce of lemon juice. The ginger syrup, just a simple syrup. Go ahead and slice up some ginger in there. Leave it until it gets to that gingery level that you'd like. Bottle it, put it in the fridge, and use it for cocktails like this. Go ahead and shake that with your ice. Strain it into like a well-chilled coupe glass, probably ideal. Martini glass would be okay here too. Sip and enjoy. You can garnish it with, you can do a little bit of sugar if you want to. You could do some raspberries or some blackberries, something like that on the rim. Take a look at the picture Michaela took of hers. It is beautiful. So check that out. Check that out. Sip and enjoy. So this cocktail is good. It's a lot of flavors that I like. Bourbon, I like. Pomegranate, I like. I like the combination of pomegranate and bourbon. I like bourbon and ginger syrup. Um, I was drinking this and I thought that it was a little tart for my liking here, and I thought that the ginger was definitely covered up, probably beneath that tartness. So if I were going to make another one of these, I probably would add a dash or two of bitters, just to cut through the tartness just a
mm.
little bit. That bitterness kind of offsets the sourness, which doesn't make sense in your head, but it does on your palate. Trust me. It's going to cut through that a little bit, but I like this flavor a lot here, the bourbon and the pomegranate. So we see a lot of like bourbon smashes that will call for like blackberries and stuff like this, but this was a little bit more interesting, a little bit more inspired. And like I said, I like that flavor a lot. If you're having trouble finding pomegranate juice, you could probably also use like a nice quality grenadine in here, which might boost
Mhm.
the sweetness a little bit. So you're probably going to need to play around with that syrup, but that's going to get you in the same ballpark too. So Michaela, you came up with this recipe. You made it. What did you think about it?
So I liked it. I wanted to talk a little bit about the ginger simple syrup. You've already done a little bit of that, but you can make your own. But if you're going to use a store-bought one, there is a really lovely Royal Rose ginger lime simple syrup, and it kind of kills
Okay.
two birds with one stone if you want to do that. If you're going to do that, though, you definitely want to do like maybe 3/4 of an ounce. Don't do like an ounce of, think that half an ounce of the lime juice and half an ounce of the ginger syrup will make 1 ounce of this ginger lime simple syrup. Don't do that because there's
Right.
so much ginger in there. It overpowers absolutely everything, even the tartness. So, just keep that in mind. You've got like the tartness of the pomegranate. You've got that kind of sweetness from the bourbon. You want it to balance, but you don't want it to completely, you don't want one flavor to completely overpower. That's why we have all four ingredients, right?
Hmm.
So just play with that a little bit. I really liked this. My ginger, the first one I made had too much ginger, and that's why I'm saying this, is that it kind of
Okay.
ruined it. It was good, but I couldn't even taste the bourbon because it was just, my mouth was on fire with like really good ginger, which is great if that's what you like. But it wasn't the point. So I would even say at this point, if you're not a huge ginger fan and I am not, maybe do 1/4 of an ounce of the ginger syrup, and then maybe 1/4 of an ounce of regular because you still want that sweetness to come through, but you don't want that ginger to overpower. But in general, I really like this. I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah,
I
the color was
really
great. Yeah.
loved, yeah, I loved the aesthetic of it, and I thought it did really well. And what I was thinking about was if you've seen the thriller, if you've seen a scene from the thriller, you've seen the whole video. The whole thing is that he's in this dark alley that the thriller dance begins in this dark alley, and Michael Jackson is a zombie now, but he is also in this beautiful red coat, like this leather jacket, and he's doing his dance. And so I wanted something that was like red with it, that I could put behind something that was black, that really was really stark, and that's exactly what you get. So yeah, I liked it. I thought it was all right. I think it's worth your time. But yeah, just watch out for the. I think a bitters would have really cut through that. So that is a good, that's good feedback. I like it.
There you go. There you go. Absolutely. And if you don't want to go through the trouble of the ginger syrup, you could probably use some ginger ale in this and turn it into a long drink. That would be excellent too with the bourbon and the
Mm.
pomegranate juice there. So let's do this, Michaela. Let's go ahead and wrap up this thriller cocktail, and we will get into this week's film. Talk about all about the King of Pop, Michael Jackson himself. We'll be right back to chat about this week's film.
Q, can you lower the lights for me, please?
Okay, but remember, in here, keep those feet still, my man.
Spoiler warning for Michael. If you've not yet seen this film, and you might not, because it's fairly new as of this recording, we're going to talk about all the things. Um, So you've been warned. I think what you should do if you don't want to be spoiled is go make yourself a thriller cocktail because it's actually pretty good. Sit back, watch the thriller film, not the angel one, the one about Michael Jackson, and then come back and we can chat about all things Michael.
That's true. That's true. You could watch Michael the Angel film too, I guess, if you want. But yeah, you might not have had a chance to see this, although it is already doing gangbusters at the box office, both here domestically and abroad. It was released here in 2026. It was directed by Antoine Fuqua, which is not a name that I was super familiar with, although I probably should have been because Antoine Fuqua also directed Training Day. Has done some other just really good films there. So not as notable, at least on my own brain, as probably should be there, Antoine Fuqua. And this stars Jafar Jackson is playing Michael Jackson, his uncle, here in this. And I have to say, pretty good, pretty good. Before we get started into the movie, I think it's probably worth pointing out to some level that uh, this is a biopic about a specific time period of Michael Jackson's life, so it doesn't get into a lot of the things later on in his life. So it's not going to do that. We're probably going to not really talk about that much. We're going to talk about the movie here as it's presented to
Mm.
us. I think that that's going to be a-okay because Michael Jackson is an interesting character on a whole multitude of levels here, certainly, and kind of his young upbringing up until I think 1988. I think is kind of the capstone when this film ends. But I think it might have been after we'd seen a movie and I had the trailer for this or some reason or other. Michaela, you and I were talking about Michael Jackson, and I hypothesized that Michael Jackson is probably the most famous human being that's ever lived.
Yes, you did say that. And I think I was incredulous at the time, but the more I think about it, the more I think you're probably right. At least in modern day history, right? Like since 1950. I
I don't
think you're
know.
probably right. I
People in
mean,
Peru weren't hearing about Europeans 500 years ago. Everyone on the planet knew who Michael Jackson was. Everyone on the planet loved Michael Jackson, especially in the time you and I grew up with him, which was in, that period up,
yeah,
through
for sure.
1988, which we're, covering here in the film. I mean, there wasn't like anywhere you could go. And we're going to circle back to kind of some overall thoughts on the movie here. I just want to pick out a couple of plot points to talk about a little bit here. But one of my big takeaways is I don't think that the movie actually did a very good job of actualizing how famous he was.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're probably right. They have a lot of stadium work, right? Or stadium shots where they show big stadiums, but I don't think I mean, I remember when he was doing he did a tour in Africa or he was doing something and like every country in Africa was like decked out celebrating the fact that Michael Jackson had made it to that continent. And I don't know, I was a kid, so I don't remember, and I probably should have done that research, but I remember it being like a huge deal when he did Heal the World.
Mm,
I was in fourth grade and we learned sign language to that song. The entire
yeah,
school sang it.
I say we did
We
too. I think it was like literally like a nationwide thing that that
were
like
all going to
every
sing
school
it.
did it. Yeah, we all did it. I think we probably it was like simulcast or you did it like with the other schools like in your county. Yeah, I mean it was a huge deal. And like I said, I don't think that the movie like really like hammered home exactly how popular he was because it's kind of like I don't know, it's like a photo album, I guess, of like a couple of specific moments, I guess, of Michael Jackson's young life. So let's talk about the movie a little bit, and we'll just kind of get started at the beginning. I don't really want to go beat for beat on this too much, but just kind of highlight a couple of things. But really, the movie starts off with, and probably the most effective and important part of the story that we're being told here in Michael is his upbringing in Indiana as a young member of the Jackson Five.
Yeah. And I think it's important, all of that was kind of driven by his father, who he didn't call dad, he called Joseph, which I think is really telling. The entire family just called Joseph Joseph. But he was their dad, but he was also their manager. He was their abuser. Like he had no problem beating the crap out of his kids. And he did not take no for an answer, very controlling. And I think it's interesting because as a kid who was looked up to Michael Jackson, and then like in the 90s when he and his brothers were old enough to kind of talk about it, that story of how tough it was to live in that house, of someone really driving them. On one side, it made the Jackson Five, which is pretty
Mhm.
cool, but
Sure,
on the
right.
other side they were all terrified, or they hated him, or they didn't know how to get away from him. And when they grow up, and I think that really is the crux of this story, is there was a little boy named Michael who wanted to sing, and everybody knew he was special. And then there was a person that was wanting to capitalize on that, who happened to be his father, and how that dynamic kind of happened. Um, and so, hats off to Coleman Domingo. He was so good in this. I love
He's
him.
such a good asshole, Coleman Domingo.
He's so awful. He's terrible. And he does it so well. This is the same guy that was did like Shakespeare last year, right? I mean, this is
Yeah,
amazing. It's so good.
yeah, he's so good. He plays it exactly the same way as he played Mr. in the color purple in the newer color
Mm.
purple. Same sort of energy coming into this one. But yeah, he was so good. He's one of my all-time favorite actors, living or otherwise. Coleman Domingo here, and yeah, he plays the role super well. And I think that of the movie, of kind of the pieces that we get about Michael Jackson and kind of this 20-year time span, give or take, I think that the relationship that he has with his father, with Joseph, is probably the most like fleshed out part of the movie
Mm.
because really it starts here as he's a young kid with the Jackson Five, being made to perform like all hours of the night, practice all hours of the night, school be damned, that kind of thing. And really it's like that fight with uh, Joseph Jackson, like all the way up through, like basically until the end of the movie. We see him, kind of at the very end of the movie at the concert in Wembley Stadium, I think it is, or
Mm.
somewhere in England, there, which the movie, kind of like soft opens to and then closes with. But really, the recurring theme of the movie is just kind of this at odds he has with Joseph Jackson in this part of his life.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I liked the way, from a critic standpoint, I like the way that the film kind of told the story and let you know where and when you were. I didn't feel real lost, which was important because this spans from 1966 to like 1989. Um, and there's a lot of things that happen in that period of time, right? And it seems like, um, you know, they skip over some years as the Jackson Five get more and more famous, as Michael Jackson gets more and more famous, and a little bit about like what's going on psychologically between Michael, within Michael Jackson. He's lonely. He's, all that kind of this love for the animals that he has. It starts like in 1969 with like a pet rat. And then, by the end, you see that, he brings home a chimp and his whole family is just like, well, what are we gonna do? We've
Right.
already got a giraffe. What's a chimp? It's fine.
That's
Um,
right. He brings Bubbles, the CG chimp, home there. Bubbles pretty cute. Bubbles is probably the the second most fleshed out part of the movie, I think, which is kind of saying something. I don't know.
yeah.
But that's cute. I guess it gets into the mindset, I guess, of Michael Jackson kind of throughout this, right? Because he has the zoo. Like I think, yeah, you mentioned the rat. I think like the first animal you see is someone's like driving up to the house and there's like a giant like peacock in the yard or something like that. And
Yep.
then obviously you have like the giraffe and the rat, Bubbles, the chimpanzee. He's like walking like a llama like down the middle of the road like at one point in the middle of the night. So that's kind of interesting. And then yeah, it's kind of this back and forth between trying to break away from the family business of being in the Jackson Five, to going off on your own. And that's where I think like it fell like the most short for me. Just to
Mm.
to reiterate what I said, is that I don't think that it really like at least me just watching it yesterday, and like I said, we both grew up in a time when Michael Jackson was uh, even if he wasn't the most famous person that it's ever lived, he was the most famous person of the time that we grew up. That's 100% undoubtable there. So you kind of know those things, but it didn't really like the movie didn't make me appreciate that. So if I was an alien or if I was a kid who wanted to go watch Michael Jackson, now Michael Jackson still resounds with kids. It's pretty wild. All this time later, like I don't think that this movie gave you a very good idea of like how like big and monumental and like the pressure of being Michael Jackson was
Mm.
or had to have been
Hmm.
to that end. So I think it fell a little bit short there, but I did like then it kind of goes on to his striking out and still trying to find that balance, right? Because you get the first album comes out. They're off the wall, which was his breaking out into the solo industry, and kind of the talking of kind of like a backroom deal that he could go solo as long as he did not give up on, like I said, the family business.
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting too because you understand the dynamic pretty well I mean, that is one thing that I think is it show the movie does really well is the dynamic between Michael and Joseph, right? His father.
Hmm.
The more Michael tries to get away, the more Joseph tries to cling, and that dynamic. It's in it we You don't see as much of it with his brothers. And I'm sure that there were, everybody had feelings around this, whether they were on like Team Michael and saying you got to get out there and be on your own, or like, hey, if you leave, what's going to happen to the Jackson Five? Because they were all very talented. There was just something about Michael, and I mean, you know. I love how they sort of allude to what happened to them throughout this, 20-year time. Jermaine stayed in Motown when everybody moved out to Encino, California. Um, you know, one of them gets married. He's now a family man, so he can't like have the Twister night that Michael wanted to have and play games and stuff. So I like that. I wish I would have seen more of that.
Hmm.
Because I think that would have also helped help the audience understand um, kind of the all the struggles, because it wasn't just I have to get away from Joseph. It's like I don't want to let my mom down. Like his relationship with his mom was super important to him. Um, he didn't want to let his brothers down. He didn't want to let his sister down, right? Like it was just there's just a lot there that I think they could have explored a little bit more. But I
Hmm.
also think that if they had done all of the things that we wanted to do, it would probably have been a 4-hour film, and that would have been too much. And that still would have been only these 20 years. I mean, there was
Hmm.
20 years after this that got, that we were alive for, that I was surprised, but also kind of glad that it didn't dive into, because this was just kind of like the beginning of like
Hmm.
his journey into stardom, and how he came from these super humble beginnings to creating this idea of Neverland. Um, and it's interesting. I liked that piece, but I would have loved to have seen more of the family dynamic with his brothers. Um,
Yeah. You bring up Neverland, which is kind of an interesting recurring kind of thing that happens in the movie is that he'll be, reading this
the
drawn
Peter Pan
this
book.
the Peter Pan. Yeah, you'd be reading Peter Pan, like this illustrated version of Peter Pan. He keeps kind of going back to it, and I think at one point he even mentions that it's his favorite story. It felt to me like that was something that was intended to be going somewhere. We know that if you read anything about the movie, basically like the last third of it was reshot here last year, which is why it was delayed and coming out. So that felt to me like something that was setting up for the inevitable creation of Michael Jackson's Neverland, which is not something that we get into in the timeline of this film, but it felt it felt almost like out of place then because none of that like ever went anywhere. But it does do some other like interesting things I think that are good that really kind of get you into the mindset of Michael Jackson. It shows him doing a lot of like charity and like volunteering type of things, going to like children's hospitals, and stuff like that, which is kind of interesting to do. It's interesting in the way that he's so affected by like cultural events that are going on. Like it'll show
Hmm.
like him watching news of like the gang
Hmm.
riots, however like overblown those might have been. That's a story for a different day. But so that to like create like some of the music videos and the dancing and stuff like that. And I mean that's the point in time that the film really shines is it lets Jafar Jackson just take over being as Michael Jackson, and that stuff is just it's absolutely incredible. Um, because he does he's very incredible at playing his uncle. Like it's pretty wild, kind of the transformation and just like the way that it looks and sounds and the choreography and like the sound editing where you're having like these like sharp like hits of like clothes and like feet stomps and stuff, and then you're listening to it like in the RPX theater, and it sounds and looks like incredible. This swath of colors like come to life, like you're like
Hmm.
in the room where it happens, to go Hamilton right there. So I think that is probably the best part of it is like the acting performances and the visualization, I guess, of Michael
Hmm.
Jackson.
Yeah. Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me, to be honest, if it's going to get some sort of accolade from an acting perspective. Um, it wouldn't surprise me if Jafar gets some sort of nomination, either like the Spirit Awards or like the Golden Globes. I don't because he just does such a great job of personifying this character, and I do not know how they did it because literally it's just like Michael Jackson was the same person for these 20 years, right?
Hmm.
Goes through multiple surgeries, and it talks about that, right? Why, some of the reasons why he did what he did, and then some of the very physical reasons, like because of the accident that happens on stage, and it burn he he has third-degree burns, and what that is doing to him psychologically. So this need to just become who he is. um
Hmm.
Jafar is also the same character, like he's the same person, and he has to look like Michael Jackson did in when Michael Jackson was 10, and all, or 15, but then
Hmm.
also looks like how Michael Jackson needed to look at 30 and 35, right? And it's those are drastically different. And so I think like the makeup was amazing. I do not know how they did it. Um it just is really, really cool to see that, and the personification of this person. I think that that was a triumph. Um it's interesting. I mean, they could have talked about a million different kind of threads, because
Hmm.
of Michael Jackson's life, right? Like, but I think that that one, that in personifying who he was and how he cared about his fans and how he cared about music was really, really cool. Um, and I really like the illusion at the beginning that he could stand up to his dad. When he said he wanted to do his own album, back in like 1978, he's like, I'm going to look at my dad in the eye and I'm going to tell him, and he's just not going to be able to stop me. And then he doesn't do that because he's afraid, because Joseph is terrible,
Because he's
you're
terrible.
right, because
And
he's
he's just a
terrible.
kid. Yeah, for sure.
But at the end, when he makes the choice, again, he doesn't. He says he does it to the fans, and he lets them know, like at the end of the victory tour, this is it. This is the last time the Jackson Five are ever going to do anything. And then he kind of looks over at his dad and looks at him in the eyes, right at the while his dad is like pissed because he's just been telling everybody
He's
backstage
told everyone,
that
yeah.
they're gonna go and do a Europe tour. They're gonna go to the Middle East. They're gonna go to Africa. It's gonna be great. And Jackson does do all that stuff. He just doesn't do it with his brothers, um, and and he doesn't do it with Joseph. And so he finally has the strength within himself, in within his purpose, to stand up to his dad.
Hmm.
Um, and again, I mean, it's interesting because this is just a fragment of this person's life. Um, I feel like that would it's kind of like, if we took the first 10 or 15 years of Elvis's life, or the Beatles right before they break up, right?
Hmm.
Like it tells a story for sure. Does it tell the whole story? No. But I think in that sense, like if we're just thinking that this is a story about a rising star who needs and wants to break away from his family, it does that story really well. And
Hmm.
we don't lose that the way we kind of lose the Neverland thing, because there are allusions to where that whole idea came from for him, but we never get to see that in fruition at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that in a lot of ways the movie is like worse for that because it feels like then, in the movie that's 2 hours and 7 minutes, they spent a lot of time, it felt like to me, building to something that never happens or gets scrapped or cut or whatever the case is. Like I felt like it was like laying the foundation for something that never happens in the film, to me
Mhm.
in a lot of ways, which I think unfortunately takes away from some of the other aspects of the film, which are absolutely great. You mentioned some awards. You skipped over the big one, Oscar. There have been, according to this Billboard article now, 38 actors who were nominated and or won Oscars for playing real life musicians and singers. So that's not that far fetched. Most recently, Austin Butler won the Oscar for playing Elvis, which is absolutely incredible. You had Timothy Chalamet, who was nominated for playing Bob Dylan just 2 years ago. Was that 2 years ago? So that's, I don't know. That's feels very much on the table because the personification here of, like I said, this larger than life like person is absolutely incredible. I think it got like kind of a fresh headwinds coming in when Rami Malek
Mm.
played uh Yeah, for the Bohemian Rhapsody,
Queen. Yep.
there for Freddie Mercury. So, um, yeah, I think that it's interesting there because it's absolutely like staggering seeing Jafar Jackson play his uncle in this. It, as someone that likes biography is someone who likes biographies, someone that likes documentaries and things like that, I've never really jived with music biopics that much because they have to be so like thin and like
Mm,
almost like sterilized to a point unless you're really like digging into like one specific sort of instance because yeah, I mean the breadth of things that happen to Michael Jackson in that time period is like staggering. It's too much to put into one film, right? It really, deserves like a 6 hour documentary about that because it doesn't even like mention the fact that he did like The Wiz, I think was in like
yeah.
1987, I think. Like it doesn't even like talk about that at all. I think maybe that was something that was also cut out of the film there. So I like
Mm,
stuff like that is interesting to me, but I don't know. Like I wish on one hand that it would have maybe either like just went like all in with the relationship with Joseph and just had kind of like the other stuff like happening like in the periphery in the back. I don't really like comparing movies to other movies, but I feel like Elvis did a really good job of that. Like it was kind of like the story about Elvis and uh, you know Colonel Tom Parker, and then all
mm.
of like Elvis's things were happening like in the background of this story that we were getting. Or this one just felt like it was kind of like the story, and then it was like looking through like a photo album of like here's some things that Michael Jackson
Hmm.
also did for the next 10 years.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, again, I think there's so many ways that this could have gone. And as you mentioned, they reshot like the last third of the film, because they had to wrestle with where does the story end? What do they cover? How much of it do they cover?
Does
Do
it
we want
end
does it
cliffhanger?
end? Right? How's that going to go? And I think I really loved the parts in the middle sequence when we're talking about him creating the bad video and we're creating the thriller video and doing these short films. And he was like, I want to do this thing. I don't want to be this. I want to create this, and I want to get on MTV. And that was a big deal. And it's such a shame that they cut it off. Um, right when they do, because it's so funny. Do you remember when MTV played Black or White? And like it was the most televised
Oh
seven
yeah, it was a
minutes.
big deal. It was a big
It
deal.
was huge. People were like, all right, it's going to be at 9 o'clock on a Friday, Eastern time. And people were just sitting waiting to see this music video.
Well, it was
Um,
not only that, it was a big showcase of like one of like the first like big like mainstream instances anyways of like CGI like happening
mhm,
in something like all that stuff. Yeah, I mean this stuff was like astronomically huge and you can't like undersell that
right.
which seems to happen or oversell it. It doesn't really seem to do either of those. But yeah, I mean I wish like just like thinking back on it, yeah, I mean because it talks about the Thriller video like a little bit and it shows like like the first little bit of like choreography before they like yell cut. But the only like thing that leads into it I think is he has it's almost like a throwaway line about how he wants to like make these little movies, but like there's not really like any sort of like input as to like why he wants to do that or like what inspired him to do that. Is like it just like came into his head, which I think is fair. I think that probably is true to somewhat, but like the only thing we get him like button heads like kind of with his dad and eating ice cream with his mom, and that's the only like character building sort of things that we get beyond
Mm,
like the
yeah,
things that are just happening, I guess. I don't know.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. I like that piece. Um, I mean, there were a lot of things that I thought were worked really well with this film. Is the film overall going to get a bunch of accolades other than like makeup and maybe costume? Because I saw so many details of like the things that Jackson and the Jackson 5 wore that had to be recreated. And
Hmm.
just like, again, we don't want to compare, but just like in Elvis, that was really epic and cool to see, especially at the very end. At the beginning, there's that foreshadowing of Michael Jackson walking out on the London stage in the Bad Tour and what he's wearing. And I never knew that belt was actually brown. Had no idea.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
couldn't tell you,
Hmm.
but I was like, that's so neat. And it has all these things hanging off, and he's got all the, who came up with this? I mean, and I am having that
There,
moment while we're watching this where it was like, I want to have 6 or 7 buckles on one side of the
oh yeah,
jacket
you
and
need
then
some
like
buckles.
3 buckles on the other, and that's it.
You need the sparkly glove. The sparkly glove got a lot of play in the
Got a lot
movie.
of play. Got a lot of play. The
The sparkly
sparkly, the
glove.
sparkly socks that were scrunched down,
Oh yeah, the white
right?
socks. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. You remember
And
scrunch socks?
loafers.
Did you ever
I do.
did you ever
I
scrunch your
do.
socks?
I
Because
did not. No, no,
no,
sure did that.
we had to. It was a thing. And it
Hmm.
was, yeah. And
Hmm. Hmm.
the first time he does the moonwalk is really cool. Everybody just kind of loses their mind, which is neat. I don't know. Some of this film, they did some things that were really great, and then some of it I was just kind of like, "Meh, meh," you know.
I do like he tells his new attorney to fire his dad, which he does over fax, and I think that that happens in like 1981 or 1982. So it probably would have been cheaper to like fly to Joseph Jackson's house to tell him in person than to send this fax. It probably cost like $10,000 to like fax something. Also, did Joseph Jackson have a fax machine? Someone needs to do a little digging to see if that's an accurate story, but that was pretty funny, I thought. So yeah, so I mean that was good. I think, like I said, like the choreography and just like the visualization of like the spectacle of Michael Jackson, I think was, where this really shined. And I mean, it certainly, did a good job of that. It's made a lot of money. People love Michael Jackson around the world, and people were interested, I think, to see this on that to, both kind of remember like this time of Michael Jackson's life, but the time in their life when they were there. But also just to see like what this movie was going to be about, because like I said, there's a long, deep, dark, winding road that you could go down when you're talking about someone like Michael Jackson here in that instance. So I think that that's good. And then obviously you have the musical like aspects of it, right? Like there's no denying the importance of Michael Jackson's music had on the world of music and just in the world as a whole, and you get to relive a lot of that stuff. The music beats I felt were kind of interesting because like anytime like something was about to happen, it would just start like playing like the like orchestral like piece of that music before it
Yeah.
would go in. So you'd hear like you know beat it, and then like it would be like the orchestrated version of beat it, and then all of a sudden
Yeah.
he'd be singing it. So like it was like the worst foreshadowing in the world, but it was also kind of neat because these songs are so iconic. So that was pretty cool. And then yeah, I mean the movie like stops basically where it started, right? You get to see him like getting amped up to go out on stage there at Wembley Stadium, and then it kind of ends with him going out on the stage and starting that concert, and then it like literally says like Michael Jackson's story continues or something like that. It's something like that is very leading. And apparently they put that in because they wanted it to read as that obviously there is more stuff about Michael Jackson's story, to heal the world, and Man in the Mirror and the Free Willy
Hmm.
soundtrack and Captain EO and all that stuff that he would go on to do, building Neverland Ranch, buying the Beatles music album, all the stuff that Michael Jackson went on to do, and until they passed away. And then, but also it left the door open because they're like, this might make a truckload of money, and it is probably going to. I mean, it's already made like $250 million to go back and revisit that other stuff. And what do you do then? You can't. It's going to be harder to shy away from some of the more problematic stuff, I guess, if you decide to carry on with this. But it sounds like they're very open to doing it and are already working on writing it potentially. So I don't know. We'll see. Time will tell.
Time will tell. And I think it's also, we've talked about this a lot, just you and me. I don't know if we've talked about it too much on the podcast, but like showing a biopic of a person and showing like all the sides of them is really important. Um, you can be, like Elvis Presley, you can struggle with drug addiction and alcoholism and all of that and still be an amazing artist.
Mhm.
You can have, and I think that that's probably one of the reasons why they did the reshooting is that they were like, hey, we can do a sequel. We can open it up for a sequel. If people want to experience that, they can, but they can experience this piece without having to deal with that. Because I think his fan base really struggles in general with that decision. And this kind of removes that. I mean, I'll tell you very honestly, I saw this before I let my son see it because I did not know where it ended. I didn't know
Hmm.
how much it was going to dive into those things and have, and then it was like going to force me to be a good parent and have conversations about that stuff. And I was like, I just need to know. And so it kind of removed all of that. And then at the same time, if this does well enough, they can talk about, all of the amazing things that happens in the 90s that is certifiably what Jackson did, as well as all the other stuff, right? So
Hmm.
I don't know. I kind of get it. I kind of get it. This film I thought did a really good job of painting the picture of Jackson just being a kid who really loved music and had a special gift, and like the relationship that he had with his father to exploit that and trying to figure out how to make it on his own.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that, that's a good story. That's probably a worthy story for someone to see, even if it ends up happening the way it ends up, right, in Michael Jackson's life. And so I don't know. I guess that's all I really have to say. Those are my closing thoughts about it. I think it's worth seeing. If you are a Michael Jackson fan, I think you absolutely uh, should see this film. If you liked his music, in that sense, it's a real good time. If you,
Hmm.
I mean, and there were so many songs that I even forgot he did that I was like, oh yeah, oh I forgot that was in his like immaculate greatest hits collection that was 18 CDs long because he
Right.
did a lot of really good ones. I mean, I think that is worth your time for sure. Um, and I think that it covers the timeline fairly well. It's not a perfect film, but man, Jafar Jackson and Coleman Domingo, I don't, wow.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
have
Super good.
words. It was real
Super
good.
good.
That part's
Super
real
good.
good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if you're interested in seeing this, then it's definitely worth your time to go see it. If you have like some hangups and reservations about wanting to go see this, I certainly can understand that and do not fault you if you do not want to do that either. So, make your own decisions as far as that goes. But yeah, Jafar Jackson was absolutely incredible in this. And a lot of times we'll see this, especially in like a music biopic. Austin Butler is the one that immediately comes to mind because he'd done, a couple of acting things, some small roles and stuff like that. He'd had like one or two lines, I think, in like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, like some stuff like that. But then we saw him as Elvis, and we're like, can he do anything other than be Elvis now? And it turns out that he could, right? He's done some other stuff already on the heels of that. But I'm asking like the same thing about Jafar Jackson because he was absolutely mind-blowingly incredible like in
Hmm.
doing this, but this was like the first thing that he's ever acted in. I think he's done like some music stuff, right? So obviously he can sing and dance, no question about that. But is he going to like, was this like a one-off? He's like, all right, I did that and I can go back to doing my music stuff now. Is he have like the bug for acting? What kind of actor is he even, right? Like once you move beyond, playing this one extremely specific thing. So that'll be interesting to see here over the next couple of years what Jafar Jackson can come up with because undoubtedly a very very talented kid. So yeah, so we'll see what he's got up his sleeve for next. So I think that is going to wrap it up here for Michael, the not the John Travolta one, the Michael Jackson one. So at home, let us know if you went out to see Michael. Let us know what you thought about it. Let us know what you think about music biopics. Which one is your favorite one? How does this rank amongst those? And if you decide to make a thriller cocktail, definitely let us know that. So you can do that on any of our social medias. It's at Drink the Movies on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Facebook.com/Drink the Movies. If you want to see pictures of the cocktails that we make, episode recaps, recipes, links to all the stuff that can be found on our website, www.drinkthemovies.com. You can go there. You can find links to Drink the Video Games, to the merchandise shop, and a link to Patreon, patreon.com/Drink the Movies. That's where we go and have hangouts, bonus episodes, cocktail chats, all sorts of fun. We do that with our patrons over there. We appreciate our patrons so much and had an awesome time hanging out with everyone last week and releasing a special episode about the bride last week. So that's available over on Patreon. Again, patreon.com/Drink the Movies. Michaela, we have a very busy month. We've got a couple of May the 4th esque episodes, a double dose of Star Wars here over the next month, which is, bringing some happy times to me. We've got a Devil Wears Prada Part 2. We've got some other fun stuff coming up here over the next couple of weeks. So people are going to want to make sure that they are, following along with the podcast. Where can they do that?
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, anywhere where Spotify podcasts are supported and distributed. We do 2 drops a week. We talk about easy cocktails and what's going on in the box office in our lobby bar. And then, of course, our deep dives, like the one right here, right now. Um, this is the best job in the world, and we thank you all so much for helping to build this community and talk to us about cocktails you like and movies you like or movies you hate. Joining in that discussion is so cool, and we are so grateful for everybody who listens to us.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is going to wrap it up here for episode 266. Michael, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time on
Drink
Drink
the
the
movies.
Movies. Thriller Night.
Best Mike Myers movie. Definitely the
Yeah,
most surprising one.
definitely the most surprising one.